Not every war begins with gunfire. Not every collapse happens on a battlefield. And not every greatest threat to humanity takes the shape of bombs or armies. There is a final war that has been warned of for thousands of years. A war not fought to seize land, but to seize something more precious than anything else. The faith of human beings. Imagine a world exhausted by injustice, where people are weary of war, confused by suffering, and desperate because they no longer believe truth can win. In that landscape, a figure appears, not with swords, not with invasion, but with the very things people crave most: solutions, miracles, and hope. He brings rain to drought-stricken lands. He makes dead earth bloom again. He distributes food, security, and order. And then he speaks a sentence that makes the world tremble. I am your God. That is the Dajjal, the greatest deceiver ever mentioned in revealed history. But if you think the danger of Dajjal lies in supernatural power or control over the material world, you have missed the core of the fitnah. Because what makes Dajjal the greatest trial is not what he does. It is what he makes people believe. Dajjal does not force anyone. He persuades. He does not destroy faith in a single blow. He distorts it little by little until people can no longer tell the difference between the Creator and the created. And most dangerously, he does not come to erase religion. He comes to hijack it, to wrap himself in the clothing of holiness. The center of his deception is not aimed primarily at atheists. It targets those who believe in God, but whose faith has been inherited in a broken form, mixed, fragmented, and misunderstood across centuries. It revolves around a name so familiar it seems beyond suspicion: Isa, the son of Maryam. Throughout history, people have argued about Isa, honored him, even deified him. And it is precisely there that Dajjal finds the widest door into the human heart. He does not introduce something entirely new. He confirms misunderstandings that already existed. He does not invent error. He inherits it and amplifies it. That is why this final war cannot be solved by a king, a political leader, or even military strength alone. This is a theological war, a confrontation between truth and illusion, between original revelation and layers of distortion piled up over time. And here, the question that has weighed on Muslim scholarship for over 1400 years becomes unavoidable. Why would Allah, all-knowing, choose not to end this fitnah through Nabi Muhammad, the greatest messenger? Why would he choose Isa, alayhi salam, instead? If you have ever asked that, you are not alone. And if you think the answer is simply that Isa is stronger or has greater miracles, then you are standing at the edge of something far deeper. Because Allah's choices are never sentimental, they are perfectly precise. The confrontation with Dajjal does not require someone bringing a new law. It requires a living witness. Not a prophet to reveal, but a man who can stand before humanity and say, "You have misunderstood me for centuries." Only then can the lie collapse from its roots. Welcome to Samana, Prophetic History Explained, where we don't just retell history but uncover the deeper layers behind prophetic warnings. If you've come this far, subscribe to support us in producing more careful, accurate, and deep content like this. Because what comes next will not only change how you see Dajjal, it will change how you understand the roles of the prophets in Allah's greater plan. And when that answer becomes clear, you will understand why the final war of humanity was never a war of weapons, but always a war of faith. Dajjal will not appear as a stranger to humanity. He will arrive in a familiar shape, speaking a language people have heard for centuries, striking the most vulnerable point in human belief: faith that is inherited but never personally examined. He doesn't need to create a new story. He only needs to enter an old one and place himself at its center. When Dajjal claims to be the Messiah, he will not sound shocking to billions of people. On the contrary, he will confirm what many already believed, that Jesus is not only a prophet but divine, the Son of God, the mediator of salvation. That is why Dajjal's claim will not trigger immediate resistance. It will feel familiar, comforting, even awaited. This is his real power, the legalization of an ancient misconception. In that context, no scholar will be enough to refute him. No philosopher will carry enough authority to awaken the world. Because the crisis is no longer about arguments. It is about who has the right to speak. Who can stand before humanity and say, "You misunderstood me"? Who can deny a divinity millions have assigned to him, not with theory, but with his very presence? Only one. Isa, the son of Maryam. Isa is not merely a historical figure or a religious symbol. He is the only living witness capable of shattering the entire architecture of Dajjal's deception. When Isa appears, the confrontation is no longer between two supernatural forces. It becomes a confrontation between the original and the counterfeit, between truth and the impostor. Dajjal survives on confusion. Isa arrives as a living correction, and when truth stands face to face with falsehood, falsehood doesn't need to be defeated. It collapses on its own. The moment Isa stands before humanity and declares that he was never God, never demanded worship, never died to redeem anyone, will be the greatest spiritual shock in history. Because it will not only expose Dajjal, it will force humanity to face a more painful question. What have we believed, and why did we believe it? Here the precision of Allah's choice becomes undeniable. This war does not need a new revelation. It does not need a military conqueror. It needs someone who can desanctify himself, returning Isa to the place he always belonged, a faithful servant of Allah. When Isa rejects the divinity attributed to him, Dajjal loses his greatest foundation. Without the false Messiah to cling to, the entire system collapses from the roots. And the impact will not remain inside one religious community. It will trigger a chain awakening. Those who believed salvation came through divine blood sacrifice will be forced to re-examine everything. Centuries of theological conflict will suddenly shrink in front of a simple, undeniable truth. Allah alone deserves worship, and every prophet is his servant. Isa does not act as a conqueror. He does not compel belief. He only returns truth to humanity stripped of distortion. And that truth is what shakes hearts. Dajjal can manipulate the senses with miracles, but he cannot manufacture sincerity. Isa does not need to display power. His purity is the strongest proof. So Isa is not chosen because he is greater than other prophets. He is chosen because he is the one piece that fits the final test perfectly. When the truth must be spoken by the very one who was misunderstood, Allah preserved Isa for that moment. And when it arrives, no lie, no matter how dressed in miracles or authority, can survive for even a second longer. A thought feels natural to many people. If Dajjal is the greatest trial in human history, then surely the one to confront him should be Nabi Muhammad, the final messenger, the closest to Allah, bearer of the most complete message. But that reasonable thought hides a deeper reality about prophethood and about how Allah guides humanity to the end of history. Muhammad was not sent to solve every crisis individually. He was sent to complete something greater, to establish a permanent foundation for the relationship between humanity and Allah. Once the Quran was fully revealed and the Sunnah fully taught, nothing remained incomplete in divine guidance. That is why Muhammad returning to destroy Dajjal himself would carry a dangerous implication. That the final message of Islam by itself was not enough to keep people firm in the ultimate trial. Allah does not choose that path. Because Islam is not a religion of dependency. It is a religion of responsibility. Muhammad did not promise the Ummah protection from every fitnah. He prepared them to face fitnah with knowledge, warnings, and spiritual tools. This is the difference between a community raised on constant visible miracles and a community trained through understanding and steadfastness. Throughout his life, Muhammad spoke about Dajjal not as a distant mystery but as a specific danger, with a face, a strategy, a method of deception. He described him in such detail that no one can claim they were not warned. He taught supplications seeking Allah's protection, pointed to Quranic passages that shield the mind, and emphasized that this trial will separate those with real faith from those whose belief is shallow. More than that, Muhammad completed his mission under the hardest conditions. He built Islam not in an ideal world, but amid hostility, poverty, persecution, and war. That proves Islam was designed to stand firm in darkness, not only to shine in ease. A religion that only works when life is comfortable could never be the final message for humanity. If Muhammad had to return at the end to repair the world's collapse, it would weaken the meaning of his entire mission. It would make Islam feel unfinished, like a structure needing its builder to come back and fix it. But Allah declared this religion completed, and that completion only matters if it can guide humanity even in its darkest era. So Muhammad is not absent from the final confrontation. He is present in a deeper way. He gave the Ummah what they need to avoid being defeated in the heart. He understood the final war is not only between two individuals, but between two ways of life, two value systems, two kinds of faith, one built on knowledge and submission to Allah, and one built on emotion, spectacle, and comfort. The greatness of Muhammad is that he did not keep strength for himself. He did not make the Ummah dependent on his physical presence. He trained them to live by the Quran and Sunnah, even after he was gone. That is why his passing was not the end of Islam, but the beginning of a community accountable before Allah to stand firm. When Isa returns, the shock is not merely that a prophet appears after millennia, but how he appears and what he does. His return does not reopen revelation. It does not bring a new religion. It confirms that the path was already completed and now must be carried out fully. Isa does not return with the Injil as an independent law. He does not stand before humanity declaring Muhammad's time is over. He comes as a follower, a servant within the framework of Quran and Sunnah. This humility is the strongest blow to the idea that truth must be updated with a new version. His return is not replacement, it is final confirmation. Even symbolic actions in this era are often misunderstood as mere punishment. In reality, they function as an ending declaration against distortions built over centuries. When Isa breaks the cross, it is not primarily about destroying a piece of wood. It is about ending an idea that God must sacrifice himself to save creation. It closes the door on the concept of salvation through divine blood, restoring the radical simplicity of truth. Allah forgives through his mercy without any deified intermediary. Other changes reflect a world where truth has become so clear that old divisions lose their basis. Not because people are forced, but because the light removes excuses. In this period, Isa is not a political architect inventing new theories. He applies with perfect consistency what Muhammad taught, and that exposes the real gap humanity always struggled with. Not lack of guidance, but lack of courage to live by it completely. Isa becomes the final bridge for the people of the book, not through endless debate or theological compromise, but through living truth. When the one once deified denies divinity, arguments become unnecessary. When the one placed at the center of Christian theology declares himself a servant of Allah and a follower of Muhammad, history runs out of alternate interpretations. So the return of Isa is not a mysterious curiosity. It is the final announcement that the story of Revelation is complete. From Adam to Muhammad, the prophets were not contradicting one another. They were guiding humanity step by step toward a final crystallization. When Isa returns to implement Islam fully, the circle closes, no piece is missing, no excuse remains, and in that moment, humanity faces a question it cannot escape. When truth is this clear, when there is no fog, no intermediary, no symbol to hide behind, what will we choose? Isa's return does not force belief. It only makes disbelief a fully conscious choice, with consequences no one can claim they didn't understand. After Dajjal is destroyed and the dust of the greatest fitnah settles, humanity enters a period unlike anything before. But this must be understood. The era of Isa is not eternal paradise, and it is not the final reward. It is evidence. Living proof that when Allah's law is applied fully, the world can function in justice, order, and peace. The world changes not because humans become angels, but because truth is no longer distorted. Justice is not negotiated. Morality is not adjusted to profit. Allah's law is not diluted to fit the times. When everything is placed back where it belongs, many diseases of society begin to fade. Not through constant spectacle, but because the root causes of injustice are removed. Even nature responds not as fantasy, but as indictment. It reveals that much of humanity's crisis has never been a lack of science, but a collapse of moral responsibility. When people stop behaving like absolute owners and return to being trustees, the earth begins to heal. Yet Allah's final proof is completed here. Even if Isa's era is the most just the world has known, it is still part of this dunya. And the dunya was never meant to last forever. When Isa later passes away after his period of rule, humanity can no longer claim they never saw justice, never witnessed truth, never had a chance to choose. Every excuse is stripped away. And this is why the end of Isa's life is not a tragedy. It is a completion. It closes the era of prophets walking the earth and opens the final stretch of human history. No prophet returns after that. No public miracles arrive to guide. Humanity is left with what it has already been given: a preserved Quran, a recorded Sunnah, and the lived memory of a justice that cannot be denied. The deepest lesson is this: we were not prepared to wait for Isa to come save us from responsibility. We were prepared by Muhammad so we would not be defeated by Dajjal. Starting now. That does not require everyone to become a scholar, but it does require living with the Quran as a compass, the Sunnah as a standard, and wakefulness toward every sweet promise that is empty inside. Faith is not built by end times panic. It is built by honesty in ordinary life. How we earn, how we treat people, and how we hold moral boundaries when no one is watching. So begin with what seems small. Learn what you claim to believe. Do not hand your heart to modern saviors. Do not trade principles for convenience. Do not let faith become something you only remember when crisis hits. The one who will stand firm before the Dajjal of the future is the one who refuses to kneel before the smaller Dajjals of the present. Ambition without conscience, lies, compromise, and self-deception. If you felt the depth of this story and you want to keep exploring the hidden layers behind prophetic history, prophecies, and Allah's greater plan for humanity, join the Prophetic History Explained community so we can learn, reflect, and go deeper together. And if this content benefited you, subscribe to support us in making more videos that are high quality, deep, and honest. Because in a world full of noise and illusion, truth always needs people who are willing to listen and protect it.